Buying a gun can feel like stepping into a world of confidence and security. You picture yourself walking into a shop, rows of pistols and rifles gleaming behind glass, each one promising safety and strength. It's easy to assume that if it's for sale, it must be dependable. The reality, though, is far more complicated. Some firearms on those shelves carry reputations scarred by failures, misfires, and even dangerous flaws. What should be a reliable lifeline can quickly become a liability. That's why today we're going to take a long, unfiltered look at some of the most notorious problem guns, the ones that promise more than they deliver. If you're serious about your safety, you'll want to know why these firearms show up in so many cautionary conversations. So settle in. This won't just be about hardware. It's about hard lessons too. The first name that always gets people talking is Hi-Point. Ask 10 shooters, and you'll probably get 10 different takes. Some defend them fiercely, pointing out that Hi-Point pistols are affordable and backed by one of the strongest warranties in the entire firearms world. Break it, drop it, damage it however you like, and the company will fix or replace it with no questions asked. That sounds unbeatable, but here's where reality sets in. These pistols are built around a heavy zinc alloy slide and a very simple blowback action, choices that keep costs low but create some major drawbacks. You end up with a pistol that feels massive for its caliber. Imagine carrying a 9mm that tips the scale close to 3 pounds, clunky in the hand and sluggish in practice. Beyond the weight, Hi-Points are notorious for finicky performance, especially with hollow point ammo, which is exactly what most people would want to rely on in a self-defense scenario. On the range, a jam is just a frustration. In the middle of a critical encounter, a jam can cost your life. That's the fine line between cheap and truly dependable. Next comes the Taurus Judge, a revolver that stormed into the market with flashy ads and an even flashier concept. The idea of a wheel gun that could fire both .45 Colt cartridges and .410 shotgun shells made headlines. On paper, it looked like the ultimate crossover, combining the accuracy of a revolver with the intimidation of a shotgun. In practice, though, it never quite lived up to the hype. Shooting shotgun shells from a snub barrel leads to wild, inconsistent spread patterns, often too wide to be effective at real defensive distances. Add to that a sharp recoil, ear-splitting muzzle blast, and the uncomfortable concussion from the cylinder gap, and you quickly realize the Judge is more bark than bite. Yes, it looks menacing. Yes, it creates an image of unstoppable power. But intimidation doesn't stop a determined attacker. Accuracy, control, and shot placement do. Buyers discovered that what sounded like a revolution was more of a novelty, a conversation piece that fell short as a serious defensive companion. When Kel Tec launched the Sub2000, it seemed like a dream come true for shooters who wanted portability and versatility. A folding pistol caliber carbine that could collapse down to fit inside a backpack, run off common Glock magazines, and deliver extra velocity from its extended barrel. It checked all the boxes for clever design. People lined up for it, convinced it was the perfect backpack rifle. Then the cracks started to show. The very hinge that allowed it to fold has proven to be a weak point, with some owners reporting that it doesn't always lock securely into firing position. That's not the kind of doubt you want hanging over your mind when you raise the gun. The sights are bare bones, and in low light, they're nearly useless. Most shooters think about adding a red dot, but here's the kicker. Mount one, and you can no longer fold the gun, robbing it of its headline feature. Combine that with occasional feeding problems depending on what ammo you use, and the Sub2000 starts looking less like a reliable defensive tool and more like a quirky range toy. For decades, revolvers were seen as the last word in reliability. Fewer moving parts, fewer malfunctions, point and shoot simplicity. That's why the slide in quality at Charter Arms has hit so many longtime shooters hard. Once upon a time, models like the Bulldog earned genuine respect, but modern production has been dogged by troubling issues. Chief among them is cylinder timing. If the cylinder doesn't line up perfectly with the barrel, the bullet can shave off slivers of metal on its way out. That's not just an accuracy problem. It can be dangerous. Add gritty triggers, rough machining, and fit and finish that feels rushed, and suddenly that always works revolver becomes a gamble. Some buyers still find solid specimens, but others end up with guns that feel unreliable right out of the box. And in a high-stress moment, No one wants to wonder if their revolver is going to play nice this time. Then there's the world of Saturday night specials, where some of the cheapest handguns ever made left lasting scars on the industry's reputation. Brands like Jimenez Arms, Lorson, Raven, Jennings, and Davis churned out pistols that often sold for under $200 brand new. The appeal was obvious. If you didn't have much money but wanted something for protection, these guns offered a quick answer. Unfortunately, the reality was brutal. Most were built from zinc-based alloys that simply couldn't handle the pressures of repeated firing. Slides cracked, frames warped, and safeties failed outright. Drop one of these pistols, and there was a very real chance it could discharge on impact. That's not protection, that's a hazard. Owners reported constant jams, stovepipes, failures to feed or extract, mushy triggers, and a general lack of trustworthiness. Worse still, they were so cheaply built that most gunsmiths refused to work on them, and aftermarket parts are non-existent. What you bought was what you were stuck with, flaws and all. The Raven MP25 is perhaps the poster child for this era. Tiny, chambered in .25 ACP, and at one time wildly popular for its price and concealability. But beyond the initial attraction, the cracks appeared quickly. The Zamek alloy frames wore out fast, some cracking after only a few hundred rounds. Triggers were spongy, safeties unreliable, and magazines prone to failure. Disassembly for cleaning was a nightmare, and good luck finding replacement parts when something inevitably failed. For many owners, shooting the Raven wasn't about honing skills. It was about constantly clearing jams and working around malfunctions. Davis Industries carried the same torch, producing pocket pistols that looked neat in advertisements but fell apart in practice. The P32, one of their most notorious models, had weak magazines that bent easily and poorly fitted barrels and slides. Reliability often degraded fast, with once functional guns turning into paperweights after limited use. Even at rock-bottom prices, they proved to be more liability than security. Today, they stand as cautionary relics, reminders of what happens when affordability is pushed past the point of safety. But perhaps the most surprising entry in this hall of misfires is the Remington R51. Unlike the others, this wasn't a no-name bargain brand. This was Remington, a company woven into the very history of American firearms. When they unveiled the R51 as a sleek, modern take on the classic Model 51, excitement ran high. It was slim, stylish, and advertised with a unique delayed blowback action that promised smooth handling. On the surface, it looked like a perfect concealed carry pistol. The launch in 2014 should have been a triumph. Instead, it became one of the most infamous failures of its decade. Almost immediately, reports poured in of feeding failures, extraction problems, gritty and inconsistent triggers, and worst of all, out-of-battery discharges. For those unfamiliar, that means the pistol could fire before the slide was fully in position, a catastrophic malfunction that risks serious injury. For a firearm costing around $400 and carrying the Remington name, it was shocking. Though the company later attempted a redesign to correct the issues, the damage was done. The R51 had become a symbol of what happens when a respected name rushes a product to market without sufficient testing. What all these stories have in common is a sobering truth. Not every gun that makes it to market deserves your trust. Some are built to a price point rather than a standard of excellence. Others chase novelty without proving themselves in the real world. And even legendary companies can stumble when they cut corners on quality control. The lesson is clear. Do your research before you buy. Listen to shooters who have put thousands of rounds through their firearms, not just glossy marketing campaigns. Take your own gun to the range and test it thoroughly. A firearm is not a lucky charm. It's a tool, and in the moments that matter, it has to work every single time. At the end of the day, your safety and your family's safety deserve more than a gamble. That's why conversations like this matter. If you've had experiences with any of these firearms, good or bad, share them. Your story might save someone else from making a costly mistake. And if this deep dive gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. The world of firearms is full of myths, hype, and hidden truths, and together we're going to keep pulling back the curtain. Until then, stay safe, keep training, and remember, trust isn't built on promises, it's built on performance.